Klay Thompson has a near perfect debut for the Mavs. Chet Holmgren shines while Russell Westbrook really struggles. And everyone might have forgotten about Julius Randle. All that and more in tonight's game night here on Locked On NBA. Let's go.
When that final buzzer rings, you know it's time for Locked On NBA Game Night. All the post-game reactions to every game across the league, every single night, with insights only the hosts at Locked On can provide. Prepare to experience game day reactions like never before, only on Locked On NBA Game Night. Your team every day.
Welcome to a new edition of Game Night here on the Locked On NBA podcast, the daily, every single day, Monday through Friday podcast covering every single game around the association. Think about it like this. Too long, didn't watch. We'll recap everything you need to know about the action before. On Thursday, I'm your host, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter, host of the Locked On Pelicans podcast. Jackson, that's where you introduce yourself.
That's where I come in. I thought you were going to introduce me, man. I'm like, this is your new day, look, we're getting used to this. We're shaking up who's on what days here at Locked On NBA. I'm usually here on Mondays. I'm usually the one steering the boat on Mondays, man. I already dropped the ball 30 seconds, and this is great. I'm Jackson Gatlin, host of Locked On Rockets, and I'm here filling in for John Corrales, and clearly Jake and I have to work on our chemistry a little bit.
So this is happening. John, whenever there's a Celtic team, usually has to miss, and we'll get to his game in a little bit here. Every time it's my first time with someone else, I don't know. I want people to introduce themselves. You're your own man, Jackson. I don't need to introduce you here, but I do like that the tables are turned a little bit because normally it's the other way around, but we got the new format here covering everything. So we got 4 games tonight. Klay Thompson making a great debut. We have the Oklahoma City Thunder and the Denver Nuggets, 2 top teams in the West battling it out. Timberwolves with a late win, and then the Boston Celtics just beating the Boston Celtics. Today's episode of Game Night is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. So let's get into it. Let's get into these games because this was actually a pretty fun slate of games. Not quite the same as all those games on Wednesday, but we had some fun ones on Thursday. Let's start with the San Antonio Spurs at Dallas Mavericks. Mavs win 120-109. Klay Thompson, the story here. Let's see what host of Locked On Mavs, Nick Angstad, has to say.
They win in the first game of the regular season, and we got to see the full Klay Thompson experience on display. 6 of 10 from 3. The Mavericks were drawing up plays for him. Luka was creating wide open threes for him, and it was all within the offense. He absolutely added a lot. The Mavs really struggled in the first half of this game when they couldn't hit threes at all, and then in the second half, they were absolutely scorching from 3. Ended the game 19 of 44 from 3. Klay Thompson being a big reason why they started to hit a bunch of threes. Luka Doncic did his thing too as well, but getting to see Klay Thompson, getting to see what he adds to this team has been absolutely awesome in this first game. You can see the vision for how he's going to space the floor against better teams than the San Antonio Spurs, but you'll see it against some better teams, and I'm curious to see how teams attack Luka, Kyrie, and Klay. But after this first game, we got to see Klay on full display. 6 of 10 from 3, an excellent debut, 22 points for Klay Thompson in the win.
All right, so that kind of sums it up. The party atmosphere there that it sounds like really sums it up. He wasn't perfect, but Klay Thompson finished with 22 points, 6 of 10 shooting, 7 rebounds, 3 steals. Look, you see the vision for what they wanted to do this offseason. The 3-point shooting was lacking against the Boston Celtics in the finals. Man, look, Jackson, after this performance, I was a little skeptical about the Mavs. This one game might have been enough to kind of quell some of my fears here. What do you think?
I don't know if it's enough to, because I think the bigger question was less about, okay, how's Klay going to fit in offensively? Offensively, it makes perfect sense, right? He's going to have some of the easiest shots of his career, which is weird saying that, seeing as how he played alongside Kevin Durant and Steph Curry already for a chunk of his career. He's going to have even more easy attempts next to Luka, next to Kyrie, all the gravity that these two guys attract. So he gets to play third fiddle to these guys. It's going to be fantastic. The question marks were mostly on the defensive side of the court, right? What does Klay Thompson look like as a defender at this stage in his career? Now, while I was impressed with his defense in this game, again, mentioned the 3 steals in there, he was active, he was switching a lot. There were even possessions where he was switched on to Wemby, and it looked really solid, right? He held his own and was definitely a positive on the defensive side of the court. I need to see it against a team with some elite wing talent. I need to see it against a team where he is going to have to check one of two really elite wing players. Like, give me the Dallas Mavericks against, case in point, the Boston Celtics, right? When he's going to have to check one of Jason Tatum or Jaylen Brown on a nightly basis. That is going to be, I think, the real test for this version of Klay Thompson is, does he still have the juice on the defensive side of the floor to go up against some of the elite wing competition in the NBA?
Yeah, that's a really good point because look, they're going to have the offense no matter what, and it might struggle against only a team like the Boston Celtics that could outshoot them, and that was a big problem for them in the finals. But look, Klay looked washed, especially in that final game for Golden State. He went 0 for whatever it was, and here at least he didn't, and that kind of gives me hope that he can kind of be maybe not what he was at his peak, but close enough to it where it works. I'll say this though. The vibes were already pretty high on the Mavs, I thought, because Luka and Kyrie do really seem to like each other. That pairing's really good. Man, Klay slotted right on in with the vibes too. You had one of these where Luka was running back, holding up the three fingers in celebration before Klay even took the shot, which is pretty ridiculous to be able to see. Anything else?
Two
was it two?
There was a second one later after the first one where Luka dished it to him and immediately turned around. He just knew at full confidence, full send, Klay's going to hit that three.
Man, for him to just slot in, right, and just do all of that, right, and have the vibes, you can feel it coming off of the Mavericks here. When Klay might be like an all-time vibes guy. They were pretty high when he was with the Warriors, obviously when you're on a dynastic run like that. But to put him on this team, that backcourt, that kind of little bit of wing depth they've got to, I don't know, they look pretty good here. Nick made a good point in there, though. It's going to, against teams that are better than the San Antonio Spurs, they looked awful at times in this game. And the thing that really surprised me was, look, it almost felt like Victor Wembanyama didn't really play in this one. He didn't really make an impact when it really felt like he should. Wemby scored 17 points, yes, but was 5 of 18 from the field, 1 of 8 from 3, 9 rebounds, 1 assist. He had just 1 block. The Spurs are, a lot of people kind of put him in maybe playoff or play-in contention here. Definitely not playoff contention, but play-in. One game aberration here or something to monitor a little bit going forward?
I don't think it's an aberration necessarily. I look at, I think the defensive side of things maybe. Look, we know Wemby is a dominant force defensively. He just alters the trajectory of a lot of shots. People understand, they're scared to drive on him. They're scared to get anything done around the paint usually when Wemby is lurking. So maybe, he didn't rack up all the blocks in this game, whatever. I think for me, the big thing with Wemby is, when is he going to start figuring out how to dominate offensively, right? When is he going to be able to figure out how to play over the top way more often? I think he only caught maybe 1 lob this game. The idea of adding Chris Paul, I thought it was going to be like, Lob City Part 2 with Chris Paul and Wemby in San Antonio, and I think we only saw them connect on one of those in this game. 5 of 18 shooting. You look back at his rookie season, yes, impressive, rookie year for Wemby. Looked really phenomenal on both sides of the court at times, but the efficiency, it's just, again, 5 of 18 in this game. He shot in more than half of his career games under 50% from the floor. If you're a big, if you're going to try and post up, if you're going to try and be dominant in and around the basket, at some point you have to start tipping the scales in your favor from the efficiency side of things.
Yeah, and you would think adding, I don't want to call him an elite guard in Chris Paul, but an all-time guard in Chris Paul would have done something for him. He's the type of big that doesn't necessarily need that elite point guard to play with. He can impact the game because of just how much of a unicorn he is. But Chris Paul also just not with a big game in this one. He finished in his debut just 3 points on 1 of 6 shooting. Did have the 8 assists there too, but the San Antonio Spurs aren't gonna be good. And I think this game, look, we can overreact on the second, third night of the NBA season. It's a little bit fun to do so, but I think people were maybe overrating the Spurs a little bit here.
I think so too. Look, they're going to be a lot. Look, if this game told us anything, they are going to be a lot more competitive this year. They're not going to be the rollover that they were last season. And watching, Victor Wembanyama and Derek Lively go back and forth, just absolutely length on length in this game, was a ton of fun. It was exciting. There were a lot of kind of back and forth play, but how much of that was just the Mavericks were playing maybe down to the level of the opponent versus the Spurs got better? That's going to be hard to tell. We'll know more about that as the season progresses and as we see what both of these teams look like facing, other competition as well.
Yeah. Also in this one, you also had Kyrie Irving with 15 points. He didn't need to do a ton in this game when you had Klay Thompson and Luka doing what they do. Luka, 28 points, 10 rebounds, 8 assists as well. He's 4 of 11 from 3. I'm high on Dallas after this game. I liked him.
I got to point out, when is Jason Kidd going to stop bringing Derek Lively off the bench? Like, at what point is this going to happen? Derek Lively deserves to be in the starting lineup. Like, what is Jason Kidd doing here?
It was interesting, right? Because Gafford didn't do much for them in the postseason, particularly like in the conference finals and finals. And it was Lively that was the game changer. So that's a really good point of like, why are you doing this? Whether it's just they don't want to trust. I don't know. Lively played more minutes too, right? Like that's what he's been doing for them, right? He should just be starting. Put your best 5 out there. Maybe it doesn't matter against this team, and maybe he's worried about foul trouble with Wemby. But no, that's actually a really good point here.
Yeah, I at this point, I mean, Derek Lively, I think, is the better option. He's got the higher ceiling. He's got an incredibly bright future. And, I've heard, different people make the argument, okay, it doesn't matter who starts. It matters who finishes the games. And Derek Lively is going to be clearly the guy that's going to be in the game to finish out, I think, close games this season for the Dallas Mavericks.
Yeah, but it does matter to players. It doesn't matter to us. It doesn't matter to you and I, right? It's not our egos out there. And we agree closing game is more important. But I can promise you it matters to NBA players whether they start or not, and not about closing games only. So that's an interesting one to monitor going forward. Okay, next game we got, which we're going to talk about next here. Russell Westbrook made his debut for the Denver Nuggets, and oh no, it wasn't good. We're going to laugh at that first shot. While Chet Holmgren looking sharp here, even with a big injury to Hartenstein for the Oklahoma City Thunder. It's coming up here next on Game Night. Today's episode of Game Night is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy, and it's the best place to get real money on sports action. And with over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. And it's super simple. You pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. And Prize Picks is the best way to get in on the action in over 30 states, including California, Florida, Georgia, and Texas. And when you sign up today, you're going to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. We're going to talk about Anthony Edwards. His more or less number, 25.5. He went more with that. We'll break his game down a little bit later. But if you thought Ant was going to have a big night and you went more on the 25.5, you'd be winning right now. So get in on the action here. All you have to do is download the Prize Picks app, use code LOCKEDONNBA, and you're going to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Download the Prize Picks app, use promo code LOCKEDONNBA, $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. And thank you for making it Game Night on Locked On NBA your first listen today and every day. We are here 7 days a week. Normally I'd be saying Monday through Friday, but it's Monday through Sunday right now, recapping every single thing that happens in the association here. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcast and on YouTube as well. And we are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So next game up, Jackson. This one was pretty fun for a little bit, and then OKC ran away with it, 102-87 over Denver. You had 2 shocking performances, I will call it, for different reasons here, right? Let's laugh first. Let's laugh a little bit first. Russell Westbrook making his debut for the Denver Nuggets, and it was not good. There was a moment when he took his first shot. OKC switches to a zone when he comes in, and he takes a 3 and airballs it. And like that set the tone for the rest of the night here. He was 2 for 10, 1 for 6 from 3 for 6 total points, a -24. Look, they've been optimistic about Russell Westbrook over on Locked On Nuggets. I don't think anybody else was. How you feeling after this one here?
Look, man, as somebody who covered a star player who comes from the long lineage of star players that have seemingly talked themselves into Russell Westbrook being the answer for whatever reason for their organization. I mean, be it James Harden, be it LeBron James, be it now, again, Nikola Jokic, the most recent victim to, fall for the Russ curse, whatever it is. Look, I'm not gonna completely trample on it one game in, but it does not look good. And it doesn't look good. What's crazy, it's not just a Russ thing. It's an extension of the fact that this Denver Nuggets roster is going to struggle to shoot the ball all season long. Jake, 17.9% from downtown in this game, 7 of 39. That is not sustainable. I don't care that you have the 3-time MVP and once upon a time finals MVP leading the charge. You need shooting on this roster to make it work. And they lost KCP and they were like, yeah, we'll just throw Christian Brown in the starting lineup and he can cut and he's fantastic on defense, but he can't shoot the ball. He was 0 of 3 in this game. That continues from preseason where he was 2 of 15, I think, or something like that. It's not going to work. And if they have any hope of Russell Westbrook working in the second unit, they need to take the ball out of Jamal Murray's hands and let Russ run the show. As counterintuitive as that might seem, Russ does nothing when he's off ball. He'll sit in the corner, and then eventually the ball will rotate and find him for a wide open corner 3, which is absolutely the best case scenario for any defense that is guarding that Nuggets.
Yes. No, look, we saw the role that he is suited to play now with the Los Angeles Clippers. And they felt like to scapegoat him and run him out of town a little bit, but he wasn't going to be the answer here. And look, this is a team that already struggles with depth, particularly since their title run, losing key pieces the next couple of years here. And they look weak, right? Like you look at the plus minus here, the bench killed them. And that's probably going to be the case all season long. Anytime Jokic isn't on the court, that's like danger time for the Denver Nuggets. It feels like here. They're going to win a bunch of games. Jokic is that good and will carry them pretty freaking far, I think. But,
usually, man, the saving grace too, just to go to your point, usually the saving grace for the Nuggets is you can at least look at Jokic and be like, okay, well, they won the Jokic minutes. They lost the bench. They lost the Jokic minutes in this game too. Like that is a big, major red flag against what is going to be probably a team that you are likely to face if you want a chance at winning another title at some point this postseason in the OKC Thunder.
Yeah, exactly. And they don't have the ability to retool. I think, look, they've done the necessary things of re-signing their own guys because that's how you're going to keep this runway going as far as possible. But, oh boy, did it feel like that title window slammed shut quickly, and you could entirely predict this going into the season. It's literally the Arrested Development meme with Russell Westbrook, right? Like, did it work for those people? Like, no, of course not. It never does. But it might for us, and no, never does. That hasn't changed here either. Look, the starter minutes for the Denver Nuggets, those Jokic minutes, were definitely impacted by Chet Holmgren having a tremendous game here. Let's go to Rylan Stiles of Locked On Thunder to give us a bit of a breakdown from what he saw in this one here.
Way 25 points, 14.
Oh, wait, we started it late. Let's play it again. There we go.
The Oklahoma City Thunder got an impressive statement win over the Denver Nuggets. No Isaiah Hartenstein, no Jay Will, no backup center whatsoever. Does not matter when Chet Holmgren plays this way. 25 points, 14 rebounds, and 6 stocks. He was insane in his Season 2 debut. Whenever the Thunder run the Nuggets out of their own gym, it's impressive. When they do it while playing at best a B game with little to no of their traditional rotation and still had more depth than Denver to run them off the floor, it's impressive. It's why they're title contenders. It's why everyone is so high on this team. A massive statement in the Mile High City.
All right. I'm going to read your text to me. For like a minute or two. It was the first quarter. And look, for the record, you were dead on here. Jackson sends me a text as we're kind of planning out the show here. And he goes, quote, Chet is going to be a pile of dust by the end of this game. Hardy can't get back soon enough. Explain yourself, Jackson.
I will explain myself because first off, Chet turned around and absolutely dominated. I will give him his flowers. I was less talking in basketball terms and more just watching him get ragdolled every so often by Jokic. Like, Jokic has got to have at least, like 50 pounds, 75 pounds on him. I don't know what it is minimum. Now since Jokic slimmed down and Chet has, reportedly gained some muscle this offseason. I don't know what the discrepancy is, but there were just moments where you could see Chet fighting for his life on a Jokic post-up. They were sending 2 to the ball every single time Jokic touched it, forcing the ball out of his hands. And so that's where that text kind of came from. And then Chet Holmgren turned it around and had a absolutely dominant performance, man.
He was great. 25 points, 14 rebounds, 4 blocks, 2 steals, 5 assists. He got to the line, was 3 of 5. He went 0 for 5 from 3, and that was the only bad thing about his game.
Only thing he didn't do.
was just missing threes. He was phenomenal. Look, they needed a bulkier center for these kind of matchups. And maybe this is just the Denver Nuggets. And I'm not ready to be like, oh, well, this is the NBA championship Oklahoma City Thunder right here. But this was a bit of an eye-opening game to see that kind of performance from Chet, where he played stronger than he looks, is maybe a way to put it. And that's really important for them. That Hartenstein injury, it was looking like a disaster. After that was one of the moves that's supposed to put them over the top. Look, he's still going to matter for them a lot. But if Chet plays like this, even somewhat regularly, we're going to be looking at this OKC team differently.
Absolutely. Look, I'm on record as saying I still think that this OKC team is maybe 1 year away because of like the youth angle of it. Maybe they need like a little bit more experience before they're able to get there. You hear about it all the time. You hear players, coaches talk about it. Sometimes you have to go through that losing. Sometimes you have to gain that experience, that playoff exposure. They might just be able to leapfrog that. They might just be able to, maybe last year was their final year of like, okay, they're a little bit too young. They're not quite ready yet. This team plays with a maturity well beyond the years of the ages of the players on their roster. They play under control. They play poised. And yeah, I mean, Isaiah Hartenstein is exactly, they picked him up for exactly matchups like this one, but then credit to Mark Daignault and the OKC roster for being able to execute a scheme that you would think would end terribly, right? Doubling Jokic and allowing him to facilitate and get everybody else involved is usually a death sentence for teams, but in this game they did a great job. The rotations were there. There was a little split period of time, like beginning of the second half, where they were like doubling off MPJ a lot for some reason, and he got a little hot. He had some cuts, some threes that he started hitting, and I thought maybe like, okay, where is this going from now? Like, you can't double off their one good shooter on the floor. Like, if you're gonna double off anybody, double off Christian Brown, double off Aaron Gordon, do something different. But it wound up not mattering in the grand scheme of things, and I mean, this was just a dominant win by the Thunder.
Yeah, look, the fact that Denver looked to be in a little bit of disarray really helped them. They didn't shoot well from three, 22.2%, but when you also have your opponent shooting under 20% from three, that can really help you here. Shea also, by the way, 28 points. He was still Shea, 7 rebounds, 8 assists. He looks good, looks like an MVP candidate, kind of in form with all of that. This was at times it was a fun game, and then it were like, oh, you kind of just see two teams on different trajectories. Denver's still going to be good, don't get me wrong, but they definitely don't look to be in the same class as the Oklahoma City Thunder right now with it. By the way, Aaron Gordon, after that extension, 12 points. Michael Porter Jr., 15 in this one as well. Jamal Murray with a bad shooting game, 4 of 14 for 12 points as well. They need those guys to step up too. That would have changed the complexity of this game, I think, a little bit as well. All right, 2 more games to get through on this slate, including, look, I think people have forgotten about Julius Randle. He was key, maybe not as key as Anthony Edwards, but was key in a big-time Minnesota Timberwolves win. We'll look at that and the Boston Celtics coming up here next in today's episode of Game Night. Today's episode of Game Night is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. NBA fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. And you're going to get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Look, I like the Pelicans, even with the DeJounte Murray injury, at -5.5 over the Portland Trailblazers on Friday night. That's what I'm going to be rolling with here. Zion's back. That's kind of the important thing. All you need to do, $5 on FanDuel. You'll get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. And all you have to do is go to FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook, to get started. And thank you for making Game Night your first listen today and every day. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, 7 days a week, breaking down every single game all season long. No one else come to y'all like this. But there's also a Locked On podcast for your team. Jackson's got Locked On Rockets. I've got Locked On Pelicans. There's a Locked On Mavs. There's a Locked On Timberwolves who we'll be talking about as well. So make sure you get the local angle here. As my camera, if you're watching on YouTube, just decided to go super blurry for whatever reason, but we're going to roll through it all right now. There we go. So let's get into that Timberwolves game here. This one was fun. Honestly, this was probably the game of the night, in my opinion, here with the Minnesota Timberwolves edging out right as time expired. The Sacramento Kings 117-115. Anthony Edwards goes to the line, gets fouled, puts in 2 shots right with 2.5 seconds left. The Kings get a good look, though, with Keegan Murray getting off a 3 for the win that rims out, but the Minnesota Timberwolves survive here. Look, the lead story is probably Anthony Edwards scoring 32 points, kind of hitting those game-winning free throws. But this is an important win for them after they lost their first game, and then Julius Randle came alive, and I think people have forgotten how good that guy can be. 33 points from him. He was 13 of 17 on the night. 5 of 6 from 3. Karl Anthony Towns is the self-proclaimed best shooting big man of all time. Not true. You get a pretty decent one in Julius Randle. What did you think of his night, Jackson?
Well, he was way more aggressive than he was game one against the Lakers, right? I think you kind of still get the sense, obviously, when an acquisition like this happens, a big trade like this, and you're trying to integrate such a huge piece as Julius Randle, there's going to be some growing pains. There's going to be, some bumps and bruises along the way. And Randle's coming into a situation where he knows that Ant is the man. It's his team, all that. He's not trying to step on anybody's toes, but he was almost, I think, way too passive in that first game against the Lakers. So in this game, you saw Julius Randle being the best version of himself. He was aggressive from the jump. He was really hunting his own shot. He was playing like this weird mix of like bully ball down low at times, but also getting out on the perimeter and hitting the 3 ball at a rate that would be, you go back to his first All-Star season where he was shooting the lights out of the ball, right? This looked like kind of like vintage Julius Randle. So if they can get this version of Randle on a nightly basis, then I think with the addition of Dante DiVincenzo, who was, so-so in this game, 9 points off the bench, 4 of 10 shooting, then suddenly this trade looks a lot better and the return looks a lot better for the Timberwolves. That was always the question mark, was Randle going to be a clunky fit or not, right? Can he be effective without having the ball in his hands? And he had some catch and shoot opportunities in this game that he just knocked down with the utmost confidence, going 5 of 6 from 3.
Yeah, I'm actually a big Randle fan, and Randle in a contract year, which it kind of is, he's got a player option for next season, is like a different version of himself. Like, this dude is absolutely a contract year. Also, he's actually a contract year all NBA kind of guy. We've seen him do it a couple of times now. When there's money on the line, Julius Randle like truly shows up. There's a reason a lot of people looked at that Karl Anthony Towns trade and were like, did the Timberwolves get the best player in the deal with Randle? And was that maybe a little bit of addition by subtraction, but also addition of Julius Randle? He was great in this game. Naz Reid also great coming off the bench, 19 points for them, 13 rebounds as well. On the flip side for the Kings here, look, they looked pretty good, I thought. I was skeptical about that DeMar DeRozan move for them, what he would add. But there were a couple times when he took over the game. He finished with 26 points, 8 rebounds, 2 assists. But here's the thing. He's supposed to win these clutch games for him. And look, on that final possession, they were trying to take him out of it. But that's why the Kings brought him in, was to help with some of the clutch issues they've had in the past.
Absolutely. Look, you have De'Aaron Fox, who won the very first ever edition of the Clutch Player of the Year award. You have DeMar DeRozan, who came in second last season for the award. I don't know how either of them didn't get their fingertips on the basketball with that final possession, game on the line. Not saying that Keegan Murray was a bad option. Again, the shot rimmed just in and out. Like, that would have been an insane buzzer beater to win the game from 3. And maybe that's why they didn't do it. They wanted to go for the win instead of just trying to go for the tie. Obviously, DeMar and De'Aaron are a little bit more 2-point oriented than playing from long distance. So that might have been some of the calculus there. But ultimately, one of the things that really stood out this game, Jake, was just the free throw discrepancy. The amount of fouls that this Sacramento Kings team was drawing. You go up and down the lineup. Sabonis drew 8 free throws. DeRozan, 14 free throws. A little bit further down the line, Malik Monk off the bench, 5 free throws. 35 free throw attempts for the Kings to just 17 by the Timberwolves. I feel like this Kings team is bound for success. They've been plagued through preseason, 0-5 there. Now 0-1 to start the regular season. I'm not ready to fade them yet. I think this is a really good acquisition for them. This was just like a back and forth seesaw kind of game. Timberwolves maybe playing with a little bit of a chip on their shoulder after the opening night loss against the Lakers. So maybe they had that little bit of extra juice behind them. But overall, it looked good. It didn't look bad at any point this game.
No, I agree with you. And a lot of people had them not just out of the playoffs, but out of the play-in tournament in the Western Conference too. And look, the West is tough, right? Like both our teams that we cover are going to kind of be in the mix more probably for the play-in tournament and not. It's brutal out there, but they look good. They only had 9 turnovers on the night. You worried, would DeMar DeRozan be a little bit clunky when it came into this? And it didn't. He kind of just fit right in and just did his thing, and it worked. Now, they didn't shoot, they shot 29 threes, and I don't know if you're going to be able to shoot under 33-point attempts and win very many games. Minnesota, by comparison, 53-point attempts here. That's kind of my concern with them. Will they have the 3-point shooting all season long? But look, it's a good Minnesota team. It's still a good Minnesota team, and they managed to keep it and get it to the final possession. They had the lead late in this one. That's a team in Sacramento that I think a lot of people have been sleeping on and maybe forgetting about a little bit. Team that no one is forgetting about is the Boston Celtics. I want to play a clip from Locked On Celtics host John Corrales here, and I got a question for you about them, Jackson. Let's go to John right now.
Boston Celtics get the 122-102 win in Washington. Slow start for them, but a big finish. I'm John Corrales from Locked On Celtics. Very much a good team heading into a bad team's arena on opening night, and the bad team coming out strong. Jordan Poole with 17 first quarter points, but he only finished with 26. He definitely cooled off. Jason Tatum got hot in the first quarter. Derek White got hot in the first quarter. Peyton Pritchard got hot in the second quarter, and Jaylen Brown finished things off. Brown was the leader, even though he admitted he was part of the problem early on where the Celtics were not running their normal offense. They were trying to do too much individually. Once they settled in, once they got back to the things they normally do well, they became the Celtics all over again, started banging threes all over the place. The Wizards are the Wizards, and the Celtics got the big win. It's as simple as that. I'll have much more on the Locked On Celtics podcast.
Yeah, he summed it up, right? The Wizards are the Wizards. The Celtics are the Celtics. And it's as simple as that. We don't need to spend too much time here. I also like John trying to create like, oh, there's some adversity here in Boston, or things were tough because they weren't themselves, or something. Please, they're the Celtics. So on Wednesdays with John, I normally play real or fake. Now we're on Thursday, or Friday. So I'm going to play real or fake with you here, Jackson.
Ooh, I like it. Let's go.
Real or fake? The Boston Celtics are boring because they're so good.
Fake. No,
really?
They're I don't think they're boring because they're so good. I don't know. Like, there's something. Maybe it's because there's not like a. You know what? Actually, you might make me rethink this.
Okay.
Hang on. I'm working my way through it. I wanted to say fake at first, but now that I'm sitting on it, I'm letting it simmer. I'm letting it stew for a moment. Yeah, maybe a little bit. Like they're just so good that there's not really anything else other than, yeah, they're just good. They're going to come in. They're going to dominate. They don't really have, like, I guess Tatum is like a little bit of a polarizing figure amongst NBA fans. People like to clown on him more than I think they probably should. But like, apart from that, like, I don't know. I feel like the really dominant teams of the last like decade, 2 decades or so, there's usually maybe like a polarizing figure or a personality or something. There's some narratives, that kind of stuff. And for the most part, the Celtics have like kept themselves out of a lot of that like national drama, I guess, so to speak. So there just really isn't, I guess, that many like storylines to run with them. They're just a dominant team. That's basically it.
Yeah, I can't. So, I love John, but I can't imagine covering a team like that. I mean, I can. It would be really cool to cover like a championship winning team, but I have to imagine it's pretty boring. They're just going to blow teams out. They're going to blow teams out. They won this game 122-102, and it like wasn't hard. Their starters didn't play in the fourth quarter. They can kind of mess around and not run their offense and still win by 20. And like, that's what they're going to probably do all season. You go back to last year. This still blows my mind. They clinched the number one seed before any other team in the East clinched any playoff seed. That's like 2 months of just nothing matters, right? Like, I don't know. That sounds boring. If I'm not a Boston Celtics fan, if I'm a Celtics fan, this is incredible. And I love this team, and they're probably so much fun because whatever teams I root for, I don't want games to be stressful, but there's not going to be a lot to stress about when it comes to them. They're running everybody back too. We've seen everything they got.
Can I draw a quick comparison when you think of this, when you gave me the idea, okay, is this Boston Celtics team boring, right? Are they similar in a bit of ways to like the big three from like the Spurs era, like the Timmy Duncan and Manu Ginobili and Tony Parker? Because like, I don't know, I kind of always felt, and look, I that's when I was growing up and first falling in love with the game of basketball. That's like, but was that big three era kind of boring at times for San Antonio, right? They were kind of like a boring team. Like they were the fundamentalist team and they were just not flashy, I guess, but very fundamentally sound, and they won a ton and highly competitive, but I don't know.
Yeah, like I think you could make that claim. I'm a little bit older than you, so I guess I remember them a little bit better here. You can see the gray in the beard and everything, but
I'm aging myself here. On Locked On NBA, fantastic.
In a good way though, in a very good way here. So yeah, you had Ginobili, who was kind of like a chaotic and fun player. There was some drama there too. Don't forget the Tony Parker drama with like fair. Teammates too. Like
that's a good point.
You're just not going to run into anything with the Celtics, and they're so dominant that it's just they'll get a close game every now and then. They'll lose a couple of games this year, and that's going to be it. I don't know. They just seem boring to me because we saw it last year, and it's just a continuation of that. And they're going to run through the regular season. Look, it's basketball. They're fun. They're good. Watching good players. I love guys like Drew Holiday, Derek White, all of that. But no, I think that's real. I think they're boring.
And they also, let's face it, the Celtics do have this ability to like flip a switch and just turn it on when they want to. They sleptwalked through that first quarter. They gave up 32 to the Wizards. And again, a large part of that was Jordan Poole going off for 17 in the first frame. But then they turned it on in the second quarter. They kept it, kept the foot on the gas pedal in the third frame. And then they just walked it home in the fourth quarter. That's going to be a lot of games this year for the Boston Celtics. I want to throw you one quick thing about the Wizards though, Jake. What are they doing with their young talent and their development? Because you look at Alex Sarr, 7 field goal attempts, Bilal Coulibaly, 2 attempts, Bub Carrington, 6 attempts, Jordan Poole and Kyle Kuzma finished with more attempts than all 3 of those guys combined each. Like when are they going to get some like real tank commanders or some vets that can like actually distribute the ball to the young guys so that they can actually do what they're supposed to do, which is grow and develop?
That's when you can find buyers for Kuzma and Poole, and I don't know if there's a ton of market for them around the league because you don't need those guys on this team. They just need to go all in and tank, and Kuzma and Poole want theirs, right? Like those are 2 dudes that want to score. They probably love being on a bad team because they're like, we can just get the ball as much as we want and do this sort of thing. Maybe around the trade deadline is when it'll really commence there in Washington. What's not going to commence anymore, this podcast here on Locked On NBA's Game Night tomorrow. We've got Hayes from Locked On Bulls and Swipe Up from Locked On Nuggets recapping all of the Friday action here on Fridays. It's going to take a minute to say. I'm your host, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake, host of Locked On Pelicans. He's Jackson Gatlin. I'm going to do it for you right now, buddy. Host of Locked On Rockets as well. Appreciate y'all tuning into Game Night. We're going to be here 7 days a week now in the new format. It's a lot of fun. This is a fun night of action. Every night's a fun night of action. We hope you listen daily here. Make Locked On Game Night your first listen every single day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. There we go.